So ProQuest Yokohama begins this weekend, and over the next 6 weeks, there are going to be right around 1,500 Living Legend points on the table for Classic Constructed. Now, this is especially relevant for two reasons. One, we're marching towards Worlds in November, but second, we have a number of heroes that are within striking distance of hitting Living Legend, maybe to be off the table by Worlds or even partway through the season. So today, let's look at the situation, let's do the accounting for Living Legend and look at it over the course of the season to see if our heroes will be available at the end of ProQuest season.
A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando.
Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to the channel, and thank you so much for tuning in here on your Flesh and Blood Friday as we head into ProQuest Yokohama, and let's be honest, we're really kind of beginning the march towards Worlds here coming up in mid-November. And this is going to be very exciting over the next, that's right, 6 weeks. It seems like a long time, but 6 weeks of tournaments and 1,500 points up for grabs. That's on top of, by the way, callings and battle hardens and all stuff like that. 1,500 points alone just from ProQuest season. So what I wanted to do today was look at the current situation we're in, right? We've got a number of heroes that are pretty darn close to doing the Living Legend thing. Will they be there for Worlds, or will they even be there for all of ProQuest? Let's look at the numbers, we'll look at the spreadsheet. Now, before we get into it, I do want to shamelessly advertise for my own event, my own ProQuest event, which is coming up next weekend. Now, mine is a Living Legend event, but it is on October 11th, 2025. Which of course it is, because I said it's next weekend and it's currently 2025. There we go, Andrew. But either way, you're following me. Next weekend, you can come hang out. If you're anywhere close to the Pacific Northwest, think about coming down, because as I mentioned, it's Living Legend. I don't expect it to, we capped this one at 32. I don't expect it to even hit that. So it could be small. Maybe you can come punch your ticket to Yokohama in a small room, but it should be very interesting to see how this one flushes out. I'm not super excited they got a Living Legend event, but it is what it is, and we're going to run a good time regardless. And hey, come hang out with me, or don't, as it may be. But either way, we'll have a good time. We always do. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at ProQuest Yokohama season. So 567 classic constructed ProQuests are currently listed in Gem. That is as of earlier today when I pulled that on October 2nd. Okay, 567 classic constructed listed in Gem, with 1,500 points available on the season. So that comes out to just shy of 2.6 points per event on average. Now, what I'm going to do for the purpose of today is I am going to assume 3 points per win. So that would be rounding up, right? Which is generally, they round it, right? And that would be the correct rounding. Now, that comes with a caveat, though, of that in Skirmish 12, they actually did half points. In Skirmish 12, they did 6.5 points. So it's not unfeasible at all. It's completely plausible that they could come in and say 2.5 points. Now, we won't know what they land to until we get the results probably Monday night in the US, right? Tuesday for the other parts of the world. But for today's activity, because the purpose of it is to see basically, will my hero be legal when I want to play them? We are then going to assume 3 because that is worst case scenario for us. Now, I do grant that in some cases, 3 might be best case scenario, right? Like everyone's kind of waiting for Kano to get the heck out of Dodge. So if you're hoping for that to go, maybe you do want it to be 3, but we will see. Okay, like I said, with the objective of this being to know, will my hero be legal on X date or for Worlds or whatever it may be, right? Assuming 3 is worst case scenario, okay? So that's the math with the 567 across the season, across the globe. Now, looking at the week breakdown, we have 94 events week 1, then 141, followed by 136, and then back to 94 in week 4. And then week 5 and 6 are a lot smaller with 54 and 48 respective, again, for that total of 567. So the bulk of the season for the most part is in the first 4 weeks. I think that makes sense. You have a lot of religious holidays, you have a lot of country holidays kind of headed into the latter part of October and early November. So I think that tracks. Plus it gives people, more time to figure out what they need to do for Worlds and all that. So that's going to be really exciting to track that. Now, if you've been here before for my Blitz tracking, then what I'm about to show you is completely familiar to you. But if you haven't been here before, first off, welcome. I want to go ahead and explain what you see now. So you see now the spreadsheet, but I'll bring up a zoom right below this. And what you see on the right side is cum season projections, and that stands for cumulative season projections. And the way to look at that is basically saying, hey, let's take Kano, for example. You can see that Kano needs, again, at the 3-point assumption, Kano needs 26 wins over the course of the season, which represents 4.6% of the wins on the season. So that's at the end of the season. If he has accumulated 4.6% of the wins, he will have LL'd, right? 4.6 or more. But since we care about, I might have a ProQuest week 4, what can I play? That's why I like to look at the cumulative season projections. So the way to read this is, again, you see Kano there at week 1, 27.7. He would have to win 27.7% of the events week 1 to reach Living Legend. And then the color coding on the graph, I think, is pretty straightforward and explanatory, but green is anything less than 10%. I find 10% to be pretty reasonable within a ProQuest in terms of like a good hero. Orange, that orange color represents 15% or less. Well, between 15 and 10, obviously. And then gray, I actually gray out anything that is just not possible, right? You'll see good old Valda down there would need to win 700% of the events week 1. So obviously not going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of our heroes. Kano, very, very plausible that he could go during the season with 4.6%. And it's pretty reasonable that he could go by probably week 4 or 5. Now, as I mentioned, there are other events going on. So this is only looking again at the ProQuest events, and accounting for that, there are callings, there are battle hardens between now and then that can also add additional points. So we do have to factor that in, that some of our heroes, especially like the more meta heroes, like Syndra or something like that, or a Kayo armed and dangerous, however it may be, right, could see additional points, and that could have additional factor on this. And that's, again, why I think that budgeting worst case scenario is appropriate. Okay, so now let's go down, like Phi we see at the top. So Kano has a 1.5 multiplier, which is very relevant to this. That's why you see him jump so fast. Phi and Bravo also at 1.5, but I don't think either one of them are super relevant. I think that's pretty well accepted. But then you see at 4th and 5th place, we have Florian and Kayo. Now, both of them are at 1 multiplier. Florian just crossed over a couple weeks ago, and Kayo will not cross over until January. He'll go into the 1.5 range. If he makes it there, maybe? Seems probably not. Because again, let's go look at him. He doesn't have any colors, but Kayo Armed and Dangerous would have to win 15% this season. So the takeaway from that for me is that seems it's doable, to be very clear. It seems unlikely. But again, let's think if he gets a calling win or a battle hardened win between now and then, that could significantly change things. Now, what's interesting, you do see some oranges down there on Prism. Also, Katsu doesn't seem reasonable. But Prism is very relevant because she's at 1.5, and she only needs 12% by the end of the season. Now, when you consider that this is ProQuest season, it's global, you've got 50, 60 people ones, hundreds maybe over in like the APAC area. So, shout out to those guys up there. But also sometimes some smaller ones. And, the Prism stands, they travel, they've got their stuff, they know what they're doing, they're very loyal. It's completely reasonable that, 12% seems aggressive, but it's completely reasonable that maybe she logs a big event, maybe she gets a couple other. It is possible that Prism could be getting close by the end of all this, especially with that multiplier. Now, going down and looking at some of the other, meta-relevant heroes, go look at Gravy Bones down there. He'd have to win 98%. Gravy Bones ain't going nowhere, right? He's at the 1/2 multiplier, he ain't going nowhere. You also have Syndra there in the middle. Syndra there is, it's technically doable, especially if, she gets some callings and stuff like that, but she'd have to win 68%. Again, with that 1/2 multiplier for Syndra, seems pretty hard to do. So I think it's going to be pretty safe. If you're a Syndra player, it'd be pretty safe to plan on being able to play her for at least the foreseeable future. Because remember, she won't actually move to 1 multiplier until January. Again, if she gets there, but she probably will. So those are really the big concerns, I think, going through, where we think, that's not to say that's necessarily like a tier list, but in terms of putting it in context of where they sit, where they are likely to go or not go, I think that's probably where we're sitting. So anyway, enjoy. You can look it, snapshot it, look it over as it may be. But even someone like Dash.io, right? Dash.io is, I think, pretty relevant. We would have to win a quarter of them. It doesn't seem like with the meta we're at right now, with how balanced it is, I don't see somebody pulling down 15% even, 20% even. But you never know, right? When you go to locals, it's always kind of fun to see how things flesh out. And that's why I love tracking these type of local base seasons. So anyway, thank you for joining. As you can hear, my voice is cracking and it's about to go on me. So we're just gonna sunset this. And I want to thank you all for joining, and go Commando.